Welcome to the Janelle King Show. I am Janelle King, and this is Extra 106.3. If you are listening via radio, then you've already heard a brief description and a little summary of our guest, Mr. Ashley Henson. If you are joining via YouTube, then you can check out the description box to see his bio and understand a little bit more about him from a professional perspective. However, candid conversations, candidate conversations, whichever way you want to label it. It's all about getting to know the candidate, getting to know the person behind the run. So as I am just kind of doing these conversations and meeting so many different people, I am learning a lot. And so I am excited to see and hear what I learned in this event, this conversation right here, as well as for those who are watching. Same for you. Get out your pencil and pad. All right, Ashley, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here, and hopefully we'll connect with a lot of our voters here in Paulding County, but more especially, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, I have been looking forward to this conversation because a lot of our candidates have been in the metro area, and I think that there's something to having conversation with people who live outside of the metro. If you're in Georgia, then you've probably heard of Paulding County. If you are not in Georgia, then you're going to learn a lot about Paulding County. So let's kick it off first by can you give us a little bit of your background as an individual, not as a candidate or professionally, but who are you? How are you raised? And what are some of your core principles and values?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Ashley Henson. I was born and raised here in Paulding County. I went to high school in Paulding County, graduated from East Paulding in '96 with honors. I started college at Southern Tech over in Marietta. And after about a year and a half, I realized that was not my path. And so, well, let me back up just a little bit before I get to my college time. So I grew up, like I said, in Paulding County. Both my mom and dad are educators here in the county. They're retired now. So I grew up the son of educators. And so the expectation for me pretty much my whole life was, it's not if you go to college, it's where are you going to college? And so fast forward back to college, I started at Southern Tech. And after about a year and a half, I realized that really was not my path. So I transferred to the University of West Georgia, and I thought I might fall into education like my mom and dad, and I took a criminal justice elective. And once I did, I was hooked. I loved it. I took another elective and then another, and then I got involved with the Carrollton Police Department through their Citizens Police Academy, and where I did that in conjunction with a class at West Georgia. And eventually, in my senior year, I did an internship with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. Mm-hmm. And through my time with the GBI and with Carrollton PD doing ride-alongs and all the things that I did, I was hooked. I knew law enforcement was my path. Mm-hmm. And so my wife's a little bit younger than I. We have been together, we've been married 21 years in June. So 5 before that. So about 26 years altogether. But she was at West Georgia as well. And she's a little bit younger than I am. So I had an opportunity because I had an on-campus job to get a master's degree for pretty much free. So I took that opportunity and stayed in school while she was there. And I ended up getting, I got a Bachelor of Science in Criminology, and then stayed and got a Master of Arts in Sociology with an emphasis on criminology. As I was finishing up with that, I went ahead and started at the Paulding County Sheriff's Office. I came home. I started out in the jail in September of '02. And as I worked in the jail, I was finishing up my position paper for my master's degree. So I would come in every night, working night shift in the jail. And I had my backpack full of books, and I would do all my duties. And once it got to be, 2 or 3 in the morning when nothing was happening, I would spread my books out and started working on my paper. And eventually I graduated with my master's in December of '02.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on that. And it's interesting. So my background's in psychology, and for a brief moment, I thought about going into forensic psychology because I was really fascinated with my criminology class. It just did something to me. So what was it about the criminology courses or just law enforcement that you feel most drawn to or compelled towards?
Well, I think initially anybody that gets into law enforcement, they're drawn because of the action, it's every day's different, the ability to help people who need help. I think you just have to have that heart to help folks, and so that was one of the things that drew me was the action, the ability to help, not sitting still. I don't like to be stagnant. I always like to be moving and doing things. And so law enforcement literally is something new every single day. Every day is different. No call is routine. And so I just kind of fell in love with that aspect of law enforcement.
So I'm an avid watcher of On Patrol Live.
Yeah.
I probably shouldn't, but that's like my Friday nights and my Saturday nights. But and I found out that by watching that, I feel like I get a good glimpse into what it's like to be in local, dealing with local issues and local people. Now, when you are now let's get into your background a little bit, your professional background. I don't want to skip around. Now, I know you're running for sheriff at this moment, but are you currently a police officer, or what are you doing right now professionally?
So right now.
Thank you so much for joining the show. Please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you'll be notified every time I upload new content. Now back to the discussion.
Now, professionally, I have been at the sheriff's office for nearly 22 years. On May the 4th, I had to resign from my position to run for sheriff. So right this moment, I am currently unemployed, but I'm full-time running for sheriff. But just prior to that, I've had a great career at the sheriff's office. As I mentioned earlier, I started out in our jail and worked in the jail for about 4 months, and then went to basic mandate training, which is essentially the police academy. January of 03 to March of 03, and graduated. I worked in our uniform patrol division for almost 2 years. And then I was tasked by our current sheriff, who at the time was the K-9 supervisor. I was asked if I wanted to be a K-9 handler. And so one of the things about law enforcement, and if you've watched On Patrol, then you know K-9 and SWAT are two of the coolest things you can do in law enforcement.
Yes.
So obviously, when he came to me and said, "Hey, do you want to be a K-9 handler?" I jumped at the opportunity. And so in November of 04, I got an opportunity to join the K-9 division. And while I was in the K-9 division, I had the opportunity to work not only with every division within the sheriff's office, but also with other agencies, not only local agencies, but state and federal agencies. And so I was able to learn and get a good broad overview of what it takes to be a leader in law enforcement, because it's not just about working locally, it's about working at the state and federal levels. And so understanding and knowing those different entities and those different individuals has been a great opportunity for me. And so worked in K-9 for 8 years. And then in the midst of working for K-9, our sheriff at the time, Bruce Harris, who's passed away, he was such a great man. He came to me and asked me if I would like to be our public information officer. He knew I had formal education. He knew that I was pretty well spoken. He knew that I would represent not only him, but the county and the sheriff's office very well. And so I said, absolutely. One of my good friends and colleagues, who's now the chief of police in Brookhaven, Chief Brandon Gurley, he started his career at the Paulding County Sheriff's Office. And so Brandon actually spearheaded our PIO program, and he and I did it together for quite some time. But when Sheriff Gulledge got elected and took office in 09, Brandon took that role full time, and I stayed in K-9 to fulfill my commitment to the sheriff and to the unit and my dog. And so I stayed in K-9, and then Brandon made the move. He left the county and went to another agency, and so the sheriff tasked me with becoming the full-time public information officer. And so that's what my job has been for the past 12 years. I've been the full-time public information officer for the sheriff's office. So basically, I've been the point of contact between the sheriff's office and the community in every aspect that you can imagine. And so in doing that, it's given me the opportunity not only to work with our community and businesses and organizations, but it's given me the opportunity to work with every single division within the sheriff's office. And so I've got a really good working knowledge of all the divisions of the sheriff's office through that experience. And so I love what I do. I love working in the community, with the community, and for the community. And so it's just been a great opportunity. When I stepped out of K-9 and went into that public information officer role, I knew it was going to be more time behind a desk. And so I didn't want to just have that time solely behind the desk. So I tried out for it and made our SWAT team. March of 2012, I joined the SWAT team and became a sniper, and eventually became the SWAT sniper team leader. And so there were situations, it's kind of funny, where we'd have a standoff or a hostage situation or whatever the situation might have been, just a SWAT related type incident, where I'd be laid on the rifle and my phone would ring, and I'd have to trade off with my partner and let them take over, and I'd have to answer a call from the media. And so you have to quickly switch gears, going from SWAT sniper team leader to public information officer, and being very concise and tactful on the telephone. And so it's very interesting, and I loved it. And I retired from the team last year after 11 years, and I wanted to give others an opportunity to be in that leadership role. And so my SWAT experience and my public information officer experience has been a great it's been a great way for me to expand my knowledge of the sheriff's office and law enforcement in general.
That's fascinating. The K9 is so cool to me. I mean, even when I'm watching on patrol, whenever they pull the K9 out, number one, I know that he's going to capture whoever he's going to capture. He's going to find what he's going to find. Right. They are magnificent. But having this experience and being able to work in so many different aspects of law enforcement, right? You had the K9 officer, the public information officer, SWAT. You've seen a lot. Where do you stand, or how do you feel about the narrative that's been placed on police officers and law enforcement as a whole, from, I don't want to go political, because I don't think that I think the politicizing of it is something that happened later on, but there's always been this bit of a stigma around officers and law enforcement. Can you speak to that a little bit from your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's definitely a stigma to law enforcement, and especially in the media, in the mainstream media. But the fact of the matter is, by and large, the majority of law enforcement officers are honest and true and great men and women, and they do a good job. And they are the ones who are standing in between chaos and the great lives that most everyone lives. And so we have to have our men and women of law enforcement out there protecting us every single day, not only in Paulding County, but nationwide. And so it's unfortunate that a few bad actions of some can really sway the masses to think that the majority of law enforcement is bad and dishonest, which is, it's just not the case. Unfortunately, the media seems to highlight very bad instances where law enforcement officers are doing the wrong things. And there are some instances where law enforcement officers are not doing the wrong things. And because of the situation, they are being vilified, and that's just not fair, and it's not right. And what we're seeing, especially with some situations that occurred in Atlanta, where officers were fired and even criminally charged, those charges have been dropped. They've been given their jobs back. And we realized that, not to bring politics into it, but it was just a political stunt. Right. And it's very unfortunate that careers were, unfortunately changed and damaged because of this negative narrative.
As a public information officer, what does that entail? Is that something that is similar to a community officer? But can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it is and it isn't. So, I wear many hats at the sheriff's office. I teach our citizens handgun safety class. I do our neighborhood watch meetings. I teach all of our active shooter training to community members. I'm the point of contact between the sheriff's office, and the community. I speak to the media. I'm not just the person that can type and write and speak. I'm also the person that is a firearms instructor. I am a driving instructor. I'm a defensive tactics instructor. I'm a use of force instructor. I am an instructor in so many different things. And the reason for that is because I want to be well-rounded, and not to get into the sheriff race too quickly, but the reason that I've done those things is because it's been purposeful. I want to be, if you're going to be the sheriff, in my opinion, you need to be the most educated, the most well-trained, the most knowledgeable, the most well-rounded. And so that's one of the things that I've tried to do in my career is prepare myself for this moment, to be well-rounded and to be ready and prepared for this moment.
As a citizen, and you mentioned some of those trainings, like the citizen trainings, I don't even think people know that they can go to their sheriff office and ask for these type of trainings. Or how do you participate in them or sign up for it? Can you tell us a little bit more about these citizen activities?
Yeah. So one of the classes that I've taught pretty much since its inception is our Citizens Handgun Safety class. And it's usually a 2 or 3 hour class. We'll bring the citizens in. We'll teach them the handgun laws, the firearms laws in Georgia. We'll teach them nomenclature about the weapon system. We'll teach them firearms safety. We'll educate them on the laws and all the fundamentals. And then we actually take them out on the range and we actually allow them to shoot their weapon with their ammo in a controlled environment. And we help them with the basic fundamentals. Now, you're not going to come out after this class and be a top shot or anything like that, but you're going to come out knowing the laws, being more fundamentally sound, and knowing the functionality of your weapon system.
Very fascinating. So have you seen an uptick in crime since constitutional carry has been passed? Because that was a concern that a lot of people said, is that there's going to be way more shootings now that more people are carrying guns, which doesn't make sense to me, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, so not necessarily from my perspective, not here in Paulding County. I don't see an uptick. No, maybe there is statewide, but not necessarily in Paulding County that I'm seeing specifically. It's one of those things where I'm glad we finally got the laws in place and the governor signed those bills into law, I guess a couple years ago now. So I don't really see an uptick in that. The biggest thing is that people need to be educated on what you can and can't do. And that's one of the things that we try to do in this class is educate folks, because before constitutional carry was signed into law, it was technically illegal to open carry your firearm somewhere without that permit in place, your handgun. And so it was just very convoluted, and I'm very glad that they have streamlined the law, because it's changed over the course of my career many times. So now I feel like it's a little bit better, and now all of our citizens can easily understand it.
I have a question that I've always wanted to know, because it's a little personal, but I think others may be interested too. So if your gun is registered in your spouse's name and something happens and I fire it, do I get in trouble for that, or do I need to switch it into my name? Because I think all of our guns are registered in my husband's name.
Well, here's what's interesting is that, unfortunately, you're wrong. So in Georgia, there is no registration process for firearms. So when you go and purchase a firearm, you fill out what's called an ATF form 4473. That is a federal form, and basically it's the background check that you hear about in the news. And so it's the background check that's filled out, and it determines whether you can or cannot receive that firearm. Georgia has no registration process. So once that form's filled out, it stays with that federal firearms licensee, and it stays with them the entirety of the time they have that license. If they do away with their license, the form goes to the ATF and they store it. But there is no registration process in Georgia. Georgia does not catalog who has what type of gun.
Oh, that's so refreshing. I thought about that the other day, and I was like, oh my God, what if something Okay, great. All right. Because you're right. Yeah. He bought it, so they ran his background, but then it was a gift to me. And I was like, okay. All right. Thank you for clearing that up. Now I know I won't go to jail.
Right.
Okay. So what are some other common misconceptions that we don't know as citizens regarding the law, or just some of our rights that you feel are probably the most misunderstood?
Well, I'll tell you one, and we see this a lot, is, and there's a lot of First Amendment auditors out there, and I've spoken with them, and I really, truly appreciate what they're doing, because they're ensuring that the First Amendment is adhered to. But what people don't understand is the First Amendment does not allow everyone to say everything they want to say. You can't go out and threaten to kill someone. You can't go out in a crowded room and scream fire or active shooter and create some kind of chaos. Those are things that you cannot do. And people think that they can go out and say what they want because they have the freedom of speech. Well, unfortunately, it doesn't. You can't say anything you want. So I think people need to understand that, because when you make threats against someone, especially via social media or in person, if it's corroborated by that unbiased third party, you can go to jail for terroristic threats. And so that's one of the things that people don't understand, is you can't just go out and say what you want. There are parameters in which there are laws that prohibit that.
So when we have interactions with officers, from your perspective, where do you feel most people get it wrong as it relates to the interaction, right? Is there some type of assumption they put on police officers that you feel is wrong or off?
Yeah, so especially like in a traffic stop scenario or really any scenario, um, the best and most important thing to do is listen to what the officer or the deputy is saying. Um, you can't hold court on the side of the road. There are instances where the deputy or the officer is wrong. Okay, we know that,
Mm-hmm.
but don't don't precipitate a bad situation by continuing on. If the officer says do X and Y, just do X and Y and live to tell the story and go talk to that officer's supervisor or whoever, or take it to court, because there are so many of these instances where if people would just listen and comply,
Mm-hmm.
they would end so much more peacefully. But we have a society where people don't want to listen, they don't want to comply, and there's no accountability. And I think that's one of the things that is tough with our society right now, is that there's a lack of accountability, and people don't want to own up to when they do wrong. In
Mm-hmm.
many of these instances where you're seeing officers end up doing bad things, the situations start out where the officer's in the right, and then it precipitates where maybe that officer ends up doing something wrong. But I think the big thing for people to take away from this is just listen to the officer, listen to the deputy, and do what they ask. You may not agree with it, you may not like it, but
Mm-hmm.
the most important thing is to live to tell your story. And if it's wrong, take it to that deputy or officer supervisor, take it to the court system, let it get sorted out peacefully, and in a way to where it's going to work out, and everybody can walk away from it.
I love that. I mean, we've always gotten this. I don't know, like we get backlash when you say things like comply, right? It's almost like people feel like I have the right to not comply. But when I am being pulled over and I haven't been charged for anything, where does my rights stop and start as it relates to interacting with officers? Because I think that's the biggest misconception, right? It's like, I'm not charged, I'm not indicted. Why do I have to comply?
Well, so when you get pulled over for, let's just say, a traffic violation, whether it's speeding or an equipment violation, whatever it is, when you get pulled over, that deputy or that officer has probable cause to make that stop. And when they have probable cause to make that stop, and they come up to your car window, you are required by Georgia law to provide them with your driver's license. It is required by law, because you don't own that license. The state of Georgia owns that license, and it's a privilege to drive on the highways of the state. And that's why it's required of you to present it upon the officer or deputy's request. And so at that point, when they've got that probable cause to believe you've either been speeding or you have a busted tail light or whatever the case may be, you have to stop, and you have to do whatever it is they're asking you to do, whether it's presenting your driver's license, getting your insurance information. And that's when the second tier starts. Let's say I stop you for speeding, and all of a sudden I smell alcohol in the car. Well, through my training, knowledge, and experience, I know what alcohol smells like. And so at that point, I'm going to initiate a DUI investigation. I'm going to ask you about that alcohol. So it's gone to a different level at that point. Whether it's alcohol or whether it's the odor of marijuana or whether it's something in plain view in your car, some illegal substance or something like that, it's going to take it to that next tier. But when you have that probable cause for the stop, the citizens are required to present that license. And then when that deputy's got the reasonable articulable suspicion, which is a set of facts or circumstances that would lead a reasonable and prudent officer to believe that criminal activity is afoot, whether it be that DUI or that marijuana or whatever the illegal activity is, that gives them the right to continue on into that inquiry or that investigation. So, like, let's say, for instance, back when I started and was on the road in the early 2000s, we had a really big building boom, and we had a lot of building materials thefts. So in subdivisions under construction, when we would zone patrol them at night, if we saw a truck leaving a subdivision at 3 a.m, that was reasonable articulable suspicion enough for us to pull that vehicle over, because we had reason to believe that truck's in there at a place at a time which is not normal for anyone else to be. And we've got reason to believe that they might be possibly stealing building materials because of recent thefts in the area. So that would give us reasonable articulable suspicion to make that traffic stop.
Interesting. So let's stay in the vein of policy.
Okay.
Let's bring in some current events. Illegal immigration. We know that is on the rise. When I study the information around the Laken Riley death, which was, for those who don't know, which was a young lady who was killed near UGA while she was running by an illegal immigrant, and he had a criminal past. He had been stopped before in Athens, and from my knowledge and from what I read, the sheriff at that time said that he could not check or run his status unless he's arrested. So how, like, if you're being stopped, then you should run everything, right? Our background is ran where our license is pulled. So how did he get around that? And what do you think what would you have done differently, or am I missing something?
Well, so one of the things that people don't understand is, like, if you get pulled over on the side of the road and I run your license, basically it's going to check for a couple of different things. Number one, it's going to check to see if you have a valid driver's license. Number two, it's going to check to see if you have any warrants or any protective orders against you, or if you're a missing person or anything like that. But that's basically what it's going to check. It's not going to go into any more depth because we're not running a criminal history on you. We're just running a license and wanted persons inquiry. Two different things. The criminal history is more in depth, and it's going to tell me every single thing that you have ever done in your entire life. And that's not what we run on the side of the road. And so, and I don't know, when that individual was stopped and what they did, but I do know about the situation.
So he was accused of shoplifting. So he wasn't driving, but he was accused of shoplifting. And then the police came out and they turned him loose, but they didn't run anything. So in that situation, is there a policy that we need to advocate for so that we can run some type of check, or was that just maybe a community decision, right? Like, seems like it's fine.
More than likely. So if it was a shoplifting case, a lot of jurisdictions will cite and release. They'll cite them for the shoplifting and release them right there. They'll go ahead and check them. But the thing about it is when they run them, if he doesn't come back wanted, his driving status matters not in a shoplifting situation. So as long as he's not wanted, they cite him. They've probably done everything that they could do. Now, the 287G program is where local sheriff's offices partner with immigration and customs enforcement, and that's where an illegal immigrant can be held. And I think that's the hot button issue right now, especially in Athens. And trust me, this young lady did not need to die. This man should have been in jail. And we have got to, as law enforcement heads, we've got to look at policies and procedures that's going to prevent stuff like this from happening. Because I got 2 young children. I've got 2 boys, my wife and I do, and they're 14 and 16. And I can't imagine what her family's going through right now, to lose their child at the hands of senseless violence.
Right.
I think we've got to look at ways in which these dangerous illegal immigrants are put in jail. We've got to make sure they don't go out and commit crimes, because if they're here for ill intent, now I'm all for folks coming to our country to work hard. Our country was built by immigrants. It literally was built by immigrants. So I don't think we can turn our back on immigrants, but we have to do it. Number one, they have to do it the right way. And number two, if they're criminals, they don't need to be here. They need to either be in jail or not here. And so I think looking at programs that are going to keep people in jail that are violent criminals is exactly what we need to do.
Absolutely. No, and I actually share in the prayer with you with Laken's family, and it's Laken Riley. If I said Riley Laken, sometimes I mix it up, but it's Laken Riley. And I absolutely pray for her family, because I know they're going through a very tough time. Staying in the vein of policy, so last night I moderated an event and a subject came up around Delta 8, and what I want to know is, now for those who don't know, Delta 8 is like a strand of THC. It's not as potent, I believe. And, but it's legal in Georgia, because you can purchase it at smoke shops and things of that nature. How do you handle that? Because it looks very similar to THC. So if you were to pull someone over, does Delta 8 test differently, or how is that handled?
Well, it's tough because it's so hard to be able to tell what is what. And like you said, that is legal. And so I had somebody ask me about marijuana the other day. And so as long as marijuana is illegal in Georgia, we will enforce that law as long as the prosecutors will prosecute the cases. Where you get into situations is when you don't know if it's legit or if it's not legit, if it's really Delta 8 or if this is something that's, and it's all based on the THC content, right? So tetrahydrocannabinol is that's what THC stands for. And so that is the property in marijuana that gives it its hallucinogenic and psychedelic properties, or it gives you the high that people feel. So the Delta 8 is a very low concentration of THC. So, legislators a few years ago, and Micah Gravely, one of our former legislators who now he's retired, but he was one of I think him and Alan Peake were two representatives that really fought for that. And the low THC oil is really, we've got members of our community who have children with seizures, and it's doing great things for those children. So, I think if you can regulate it the way that it's being regulated, and it does have medicinal purposes in certain situations. And so I think that it's a great opportunity for people who have disabilities that need that low THC oil. Now, the high THC oil, it's my understanding it does not have any medicinal purposes, and it's purely recreational. And so that's where you get into the differentiation with the high and the low. Anything below 5% is considered low THC oil. Anything above 5% is considered high THC oil, and it's a felony to possess. But you just have to take it on a case-by-case basis. You have to talk to the people. You have to look at the packaging, and you have to make sure you're making an informed decision. You don't want to make a case that's not a good case. And so it's like I said, you have to be very careful if you're going to make an arrest on gummies or whatever it is.
So keep your receipt, people. That's what I'm hearing. I'm like, there's really no way to really. Okay. Do you think it would be easier if it was legalized socially? Would it be easier for law enforcement overall? Or is that just something that's tricky and, Well,
it is. It's very tricky. A lot of people would love to hear me say, yes, we should legalize it. But, I've heard from sheriffs and law enforcement from other states that talk about the negative impacts that it's had on legalization's had on them out there with bringing, a lot of problems with it. And so, we will do whatever the General Assembly wants done. We will enforce the laws that they hand down. We'll leave that with the lawmakers. That's a tough situation. We'll do whatever they hand down to us.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I go back and forth on that subject because I was raised holistic. And so part of me is like, well, I mean, there are some holistic properties into that you can't ignore. But then on the other side, I'm like, well, is it going to create more problems? I don't know. Right. Yeah, Colorado seems to be handling it somewhat, I guess. I don't know. We'll see. We'll cross that bridge when it comes. Right.
That's right.
So as we're staying in the lane of policy, let's talk about your race. You are running for sheriff in Paulding County, Georgia, and you have an extensive background in law enforcement. But what do you feel is the core responsibility of a sheriff, and why do you feel like you have that or you can achieve it?
Yeah, so the three pillars of our campaign is being community driven, innovative, and forward thinking. And I think you have to be all of those things in order to be an effective sheriff, any kind of effective leader. Because bear in mind, and a lot of people get hung up on position and title. Position, title, rank, those things don't equate to leadership. Leadership is a behavior, and it's a choice. You have to choose to be a leader, and people have to choose to whether or not they want to follow you. And so I'm excited about this opportunity because I've been one of those deputies that has been on the streets. I've not been in a high-level leadership position for years. Our deputies still talk to me. I know what they want. They want to be heard. And so that's one of the things that we've got to do. And I think that's a twofold statement. Our deputies want to be heard, and our citizens want to be heard. And so that's what we've got to do. We've got to be more community driven. We've got to get out in the community, and we've got to have these crucial conversations and bridge these gaps, especially with members of our community that may have some distrust with law enforcement. We've got to get out there and have these town hall meetings, these community forums, these coffee with a cop. We got to have these events to bridge these gaps. before these bad situations happen. Because if you don't have the conversation, by the time you get out there on the side of the road, it's a done deal. It's going to go bad. And so we've got to have these conversations beforehand so we can build these relationships, because that's what it's all about. Externally in our community, that's what our citizens want. Internally, that's what our staff and deputies want. They want to know that they're being heard. They want to know that their needs are being met. And we're going to continue working with our Board of Commissioners to ensure that our deputies get the best pay and benefits that we can possibly get for them. But the big thing is, it's not about me. This is about we. It's about us. As Paulding County residents, and it's way bigger than me. We have to ensure that our county is safe. Our county is one of the fastest growing counties in the state, and I think right now we've got about 180,000 folks. We're a huge veteran community to Metro Atlanta, and so when you have more people come and live in your area, you're going to have more crimes. And so I think by being innovative, and forward thinking. One of the things that we want to do is we want to implement body cameras. Our uniform patrol deputies don't have body cameras right now. That is a huge, yes, it's such a huge problem. And we've got to do that. Now, our jailers have them and our school resource deputies have them, but our deputies on the road don't. And that's another way that you ensure transparency amongst your community and your staff, because these deputies know that when they have that camera on, they're protected because they know they're going to do the right things. And our community knows, hey, there's that camera. It's going to record this interaction. It's going to be a positive interaction.
It's interesting because I think there's a stigma around body cameras too, right? And I think body cameras protect the officer just as much as it does the other person, right? I mean, especially when you have hearsay that goes back and forth all the time.
That's exactly right.
That's a great point. I didn't know that. And I think that's definitely something that I can get behind, that you should definitely implement.
100%.
That being said, Lee, let's talk about some other things that you are looking towards implementing that you feel would be great for Paulding County.
Yeah, so, just to add a couple things on to the body camera aspect of things. So back when I was a K9 handler on the road, we've had in-car cameras. So we have cameras in our cars, which are great, but we've got to implement the body cameras. But one of the things that I would do is I would go ahead and, as soon as I saw the violation and I knew I was going to pull them over, I would go ahead and hit record, and I would start narrating what I'm doing. I'm at such and such location. It's this date, it's this time. I just observed this car doing A, B, or C. I'm going to perform a traffic stop at this location. And I did that for multiple reasons. Number one, I'm telling a story to the jury if it goes to court. Number two, I am telling my coworkers, if I get killed, this is where I am and this is what I'm doing. And they'll at least have, they'll have some knowledge about what's going on. And then I'm also painting the picture of why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's not like, okay, the camera clicks on and you see this stop. The picture's been painted. You've already been explained to what is happening and why it's happening. And so it's kind of like when you watch Cops when we were younger. You watched the show Cops and on Patrol Live now, or the new show.
On Patrol Live. It was live.
That's it.
Yeah.
They're narrating what they're doing and why they're doing it. So you as the viewer understand, oh, he's doing it because of this. And so a lot of times I would do, well, not a lot of times, every time I would do that. And I think that's what we got to implement with body cameras too, is narrate what we're doing and why we're doing it. Because that gives people a better understanding of, okay, I just observed this vehicle fail to maintain lane 3 times. Or if you're doing field sobriety on a DUI stop, I would literally have my voice pack in my hand and I would say, stepped off line in the walk and turn, put foot down in the one leg stand, distinct and sustain nystagmus at maximum deviation. I would say all those things so it would be into the record, and it wouldn't just be my word on a piece of paper, but I was actually audibly saying that stuff at the moment. And so that's just kind of elaborating on how you really can increase transparency by doing those things. But what are some other things that we want to do at the sheriff's office? Well, right now we've got, I heard last night at our forum, we've got 40 vacancies at the sheriff's office. And so the city of Dallas, the city of Hiram, which are 2 municipalities in Paulding County, they've got 1 vacancy. Harrelson and Douglas is, as I understand it, they're pretty much full. The city of Marietta is pretty much full. Cobb PD of 700 officers, they've got about 40 vacancies. So we've got a vacancy problem. And so one of the things that we've got to do is we've got to change our culture internally. And we've got to create a culture where people want to stay there and where they want to come there. And how you do that is you change, you pretty much change the culture. You change the leadership, and you give these men and women their voice, and you allow them to be heard. And so that's what we're going to do, is we're going to allow them to be heard. We're going to look at things, and you're going to think this is silly, but one of the things that I've heard in this campaign from our deputies is, are we going to be able to grow a beard? And most people think that's silly. Wow. But for our male deputies, they want to grow a beard. Facial hair has been such a stigma in law enforcement because you've always, had the picture of that clean cut officer and things. And now law enforcement's changed. Tattoos are okay. We're getting these men and women coming out of the military and they've got tattoos. Tattoos don't indicate anything other than someone has
lived experiences.
Yeah, they love to share their experiences and their art, and it's okay. And beards are the same way. And so that's something that we can do. It doesn't cost the taxpayers a dime. We'll obviously have strict standards of how it's supposed to look, but that's something free that we can do to boost the morale. And you would be amazed at how much of a morale boost that's going to be once we implement that. Like I said before,
3 things that I feel going to boost morale. The body cameras boost morale, right? The narration, knowing that you have that extra layer of transparency in that, you'll have their back. That'll boost morale. And then again, appearances. And to your point, I like, I'm married to a military guy, so I like the clean shaven look and all that. But I do think that our officers will probably have a better interaction with people in the community when you break that too, right? When you look like the people you're working with. That's interesting.
And I'm the same way. I'm very appearance focused. I think one of the things when I teach a class is you believe what you see before you believe what you hear, and I say that all the time, and I try to live that. So in every aspect of my life, I try to be squared away. And for me personally, I'm not currently employed, so I could grow a beard if I wanted to. Matter of fact, I can grow a great beard, but I don't think that for me it looks like what I want to look like. But because I don't like it, should I punish all of our staff because I don't like it? No, I've got to be bigger than that, because it's not about me; it's about we. And you got to start thinking what's going to make us better. And so that's something that's going to make us better. It's going to increase morale and all the things. Going back to what do we want to do? We've got to get out in the community more community events, town hall meetings, coffee with a cop, things like that. Let's hear these concerns. That's one of the things that I've heard on the campaign trail, because we've been knocking on doors. We've been at meet and greet events, and some of the biggest concerns that our citizens have. And you have to remember, for most everyday ordinary citizens, they don't have interaction with law enforcement other than maybe a traffic stop or a car accident. And so for the vast majority of citizens, here's what they're saying. They want traffic slowed down. They want these people to stop speeding up and down our roads. They want, right now, our deputies don't work very many accidents. And so we have to wait on the state patrol to come in. They want our deputies to start working accidents, so they're not waiting an hour and a half on a trooper to get there. Our troopers are great resources, and we'll continue to partner with them. But if it's a small fender bender and it's going to take the state patrol a while to get out there, our deputies can work that and get these citizens back on the road. And then finally, the drug problem. The drug problem is not just a Paulding County problem; it's a nationwide problem. And so one of the things that we want to do is we want to partner with our federal entities to get the resources of the federal government with the DEA and HIDA, and get on some of those task forces, because when you get those federal task forces involved, you bring all of the resources they have to Paulding County. So right now we have the West Metro Drug Task Force, which is a multi-jurisdictional task force, and it's overseen by the GBI. It's a great resource, and we will continue that, but we need to look at other resources as well.
I can talk to you about this all day long. I mean, I've heard so many solutions, and I just get excited about that, because a lot of times you hear about the stuff we want to be fixed or we have issues with, but rarely do we get specific solutions. And these are things that I truly believe in my heart can be implemented right away.
Absolutely.
It doesn't seem it's complicated. It's not a hard sell to the community. And I want to see that in other races, right? I want to see other people have those type of solution oriented responses. I enjoyed it. I appreciate that. I look forward to people hearing this because these are the things that oftentimes I feel like you as in law enforcement in general and around this subject, it's almost like you have to tread this thin line of actually maintaining the law and not stepping too far into compassion, while also not stepping too far into maintaining the law if you lose compassion. Right. But it just sounds like your solutions is a good mix of both, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I love that.
One of the things that I've tried to do is, having grown up here, this is my community. I've lived here my entire life. Jody and I, our boys are 9th generation Paulding County residents. So this is home. Win or lose, I'll never leave Paulding County. And so it means something to me. I could have, with my training, education, all the things, I could have gone elsewhere and made a lot of money in law enforcement. But I don't want to, because this is home and I want to make a difference in my community. Because one of the reasons that I'm running for sheriff is not only to ensure that my kids have a safe place to live, work, and play, but for all these other residents and their children and their grandchildren. We're expected to grow in population by 100,000 people in the next probably 5 to 10 years. So the people are coming and we've got to be ready for that. And we got to have someone who is ready for that growth and can embrace that growth. We got a lot of folks, we've got multiple races right now. We got a commission chairman, a post 4 commissioner race, a post 1 commissioner race. And, that's one of the things that I'm hearing at all these forums that I've been attending is that people are concerned about the growth. Well, the growth is coming. I don't know that there's much that we can do to stop it. We have got to prepare for it. And the way law enforcement prepares for it is by increasing our staff, changing morale, making people want to come here, making people want to stay here and finish their careers with us. Because one of the things I call Paulding County is cop land, because all the Metro Atlanta officers live in Paulding because it's a nice, safe, quiet place where you can afford a home, and they all live out here. And so we want to make this a place where they want to be. And, I think it's important to understand that Paulding County is a great place to raise a family, and we want to keep it that way. And we've got to have the support of our community to be able to do that.
I love that. Okay, we're going to do something that's a little lighthearted. It's my Would You Rather segment. You cannot elaborate or explain, but you can just just tell me which would you choose, right? So would you rather? Right. This is law enforcement style. So let's see here. Now, after we do this, I'm going to come back and I want you to then share, how people can follow you, how they can support you and things of that nature. So get that in your mind. All right. First, would you rather on a traffic stop or any type of interaction, would you rather have the power of mind reading or the ability to become invisible during investigations?
Ooh, I think I would rather be able to read their minds and know what they're thinking.
Okay. Would you rather always know the truth but never be believed, or always be believed but never know the truth in your law enforcement career?
I think I'd rather know the truth.
Okay. Would you rather work in a bustling, this one probably, but would you rather work in a bustling urban area with high crime rates or in a quiet rural area with occasional but intense criminal activity?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with the latter. That's exactly where we are.
I figured that when I saw that question, I was like, I think I know the answer to that one. Would you rather have the ability to teleport or be able to fly as a law enforcement officer? Would you rather fly or just teleport?
I think fly, because then you could see what was going on below you.
Okay. Okay, cool. And lastly, would you rather work undercover on a long-term assignment or be a part of a tactical unit for high-risk operations?
I would rather do the tactical unit for the high-risk operations, because I've done that and it's awesome, and it's awesome.
I thought you were going to say that when you mentioned SWAT. I was like, oh, he's answering my question.
Yeah.
Okay, but no, this has been really, really good. Like I said, I I've never heard so many actual solutions, and that excites me. It really does, because that's what we need. I think we're tired. People are tired of talking about the problem. What are you going to do to fix it? And I've heard it. That being said, how can people follow you, find you, and support you?
So, obviously early voting started recently, and the election for the sheriff's race in Paulding County will be decided on May 21st. There's only 2 Republican candidates, and so the sheriff will be selected on May 21st. So we've got a great website. We've got a great social media page. So AshleyHensonForSheriff.com and then Ashley Henson for Sheriff on social media. We are hosting multiple events. We still have quite a few events coming up. We've got a meet and greet this Thursday. We've got a golf tournament on Monday, May 6th. We've got so many events. Check our social media out and just come to an event. If you're on the fence on whether not you don't who to vote for, come to an event. My phone number's on the website. Give me a call. I think that this is a very important election for so many reasons in Paulding County, because the sheriff's race will be decided. Our commission chairman's race will be decided. Our post 1 commissioner, our post 4 commissioner, and a school board seat. Actually, a couple school board seats. So it's very important that people get out and understand that, the presidential election in November is very important, but these local primaries, these are the ones, in my opinion, that are the most important, because your commissioners are going to set the millage rate, which determines how much you pay in property taxes. And so a lot of times people don't understand that. So I really wish people would get out and vote, educate yourselves on the candidates. If you got a question for me, I'm an open book. Call me. I don't claim to know it all, but what I do know is that it takes a team, and we're going to build a great team to ensure that Paulding County is a safe place to live, work, and play.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Ashley. I'm going to let you get back to campaigning and being on the trail, but I appreciate you dropping by, sharing your insight, giving us some solutions, and having a wonderful conversation. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much, and I really appreciate the opportunity.